Horizon Call of the Mountain spins the series off from its third-person action game roots into a first-person VR climbing and archery simulator. It's arguably meant to be the killer app in the PSVR2 launch lineup, and is one of the few virtual reality games that could be called a true AAA experience. But fair warning, if you have a weak stomach or a fear of heights, it might make you want to hurl. Things start off with a theme park-like boat ride to give you plenty of those ooh and ah moments that only VR can give, letting you fully appreciate the true scale of Horizon's robot dinosaurs as they take turns parading by. Call of the Mountain follows Reyes, an incarcerated shadow carja. But when your captors realize that you're good at climbing and archery, they decide to send you on a series of quests to climb things, to get things. I would be more specific on plot details, but I was usually too distracted messing about to pay attention.
You'll need pickaxes to climb Bright Dawn.
The main chunk of the game consists of climbing stuff, which is fairly intuitive to do. You simply move a hand to grab any climbable surface, and then move your other hand to grab the next bit to pull you up. It's pretty much like climbing in real life, just without any of the legwork, or risk of serious injury or death. As you progress, you get various gadgets like pickaxes and rope darts that help mix up the climbing a little. I was particularly fond of the moments that let me live my Lara Croft fantasy by leaping at walls in slow motion while pulling out my pickaxes. If you watched my Horizon Forbidden West review, you may remember me saying this. Personally, I'm kind of over climbing in games. If I never have to slowly climb up another cliff face, I'll be a happy man. So imagine my joy when I realized this was mostly a game about climbing cliffs. But on the plus side, climbing in VR is much more interesting and involved than simply pushing a stick and watching Aloy clamber around. On the downside though, I personally found it a bit stomach churning. After a while I did get my sea legs with it, but early on I found myself needing to take frequent breaks. I find with VR there are certain things that set off nausea for me, and simply walking around can be a big one, so I was disappointed there was no teleport to a point option like a lot of games have. Also, the way the position of your hands can swing your head around while climbing can be quite unpleasant, especially if you make a weird move and aren't ready for it. Those of you with stronger stomachs may have no issue, and there are quite a few comfort options such as movement speed and vignette effects that do help. But if this is going to be your first VR game, just beware this sits on the more intense side of things. At least if you can stomach it all, you are well rewarded with some stunning vistas. It is a beautiful game, and I often enjoy taking a moment to stop and enjoy the views. And to give myself a bit of a breath, climbing fake mountains can be surprisingly tiring. And thankfully I have no issues with heights, but if you do, well, try not to look down. It's not all climbing. When robot dinos do descend on you, you have a trusty bow and quiver full of endless arrows to help fight them off, as well as limited special arrows like fire, shock, tear and precision that you can craft for some extra punch. Eventually you also get a sling too, which can add some welcome firepower to fights, but ultimately it felt like a bit of an afterthought. When combat kicks off, you get locked into a circular track, which helps keep the action in front of you, while letting you execute a quick dash to either side or a lean to avoid attacks. And battling these big bionic beasts up close is certainly an experience and a highlight of the adventure. The action of pulling arrows out of your quiver by reaching behind you and loading them into your bow is intuitive and feels great to do. Mostly. With me soon feeling like an expert archer, able to quickly target dinos' weak spots in the heat of battle. I say mostly there though because there's a line the combat occasionally crosses between feeling great and being repetitive or even painful. Sometimes arrows will frustratingly fail to get grabbed, and some fights felt like they dragged on much longer than I would have liked. Holding out my arm to aim my bow while rapidly pretending to pull arrows out of my ear with my other arm goes from fun to please make it stop pretty quickly. Across the adventure there are occasional puzzles and stealth sections to change things up a bit, and while it's mostly a very linear affair, there are side paths to venture down where you may find collectibles or silly things like instruments or paint you can play with, or my favourite, pottery to smash. And in general, Call of the Mountain does a great job of letting you interact with a lot of stuff and having it respond to how you would expect. Although I would have appreciated if there was a way to pull items towards you from a distance without having to physically go grab them, as those with smaller spaces may find themselves often trying to reach through a real life wall. I also wasn't a fan of how your hands can get tangled in parts of the world and become detached from where your real hand is. It's a very off-putting sensation. Outside of the main campaign, there's also a little challenge arena with a target range and assault course to set high scores on. And there's also a nice relaxing safari boat ride that takes you down a river and shows off all the dinosaurs running around and fighting each other. Perfect for demoing your fancy new VR headset to someone like my mum, who wants to check it out but can't be bothered to actually play anything. Overall, Horizon Call of the Mountain isn't quite a must-play killer app, but it is nevertheless an impressive and meaty VR game, with a long campaign to work through that will give you plenty of wow moments. I did find it best enjoyed in short bursts, as the climbing and combat can get physically tiring, and those susceptible to motion sickness may find it all a touch intense. But if you can stomach it, it's a memorable trip into Robot Jurassic Park, and an impressive way to show off what PSVR 2 is capable of. Play. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to give it a like, and get subscribed to ABC Gamer for all your gaming needs.